Hey guys, I'm Sarah Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Sleeping is one of the top concerns that I hear from parents, and I always hear you will never sleep again. First of all, that's just not true. You will sleep again and it will be okay, but your sleep will change when you have a baby. So I'm here to help calm your nerves, help set you up with some realistic expectations for what to expect in the first few weeks of life. And then I'll come back for part 2 with some tips to help you cope with that change, giving you some extra expert tips along the way. So make sure you subscribe down below so that you never miss a future video. And then let's get you rested and sleeping. I don't know about you, but for me, I can function on a pretty small amount of sleep, but I know that over time, if I keep sleeping very little, like I'm talking 4 hours at times, that does catch up with me. It starts to affect my mood. It starts to affect my tolerance of certain things. I get a little more snappy. I also notice that my productivity is down when I don't sleep. Now, take that and apply that to having a new baby. One of the things that I hear from families is either you'll never sleep again. I hear just sleep when the baby sleeps. Or I hear that you'll be in postpartum land. And I do actually use that terminology because there is this element of right after you have a baby, it is a massive transition in so many different ways for your life. And one of those big changes is your sleep. So I think before we get into tips for sleep, I want you to understand a little bit more about the normal, natural way that a newborn sleeps. Now, sleep is so important. It's good for our brains, although we don't totally know why we need to sleep because our brain activity goes just as fast during sleep as it does when we're awake, which is so fascinating to me. But we know even just from anecdotal experience that sleep is extremely important to our own growth and development. We know for kids, their growth hormone increases when they sleep, so they actually grow. It allows the body to settle. It hopefully decreases the nervous system and helps recover from life events. And sleep during the first 2 years of life of a child is highly dynamic, meaning it's changing so much. But let me tell you, it changes with the growth and development of your child. So a newborn sleeps differently than a 2-year-old, as you've maybe heard from your friends or if you have a baby already. We know sleep changes, right? And so that's the first kind of little piece of hope. Everything that I'm gonna tell you about what to expect for newborn sleep when you have a new baby, just know it's all temporary, that you literally can do anything for a short amount of time. I know for me, maybe this is a dumb analogy, but I worked night shift for 6 years and I also did nursing school, right? And nursing school, I probably slept and I worked night shift during nursing school. And I probably slept on average 4 hours a night for a very long time, and I'd have little spurts of breaks where I'd catch up. I'd sleep like 19 hours after a bunch of night shifts in a row. I was a killer sleeper. Now my life is a little bit more stable unless I've been at a birth or something. And so I've gone through seasons of my own personal life where my sleep has been interrupted. It hasn't been great, but also there was always that hope on the other side. So I want to remind you, there's always hope on the other side. And if you're in the middle of it right now, God bless you. This is not forever. Okay, so we know that sleep changes. We know that kids need sleep, that sleep is highly important. And then if we talk about a newborn, by newborn, I'm gonna talk about the first 6 weeks of life here. Okay, a newborn sleeps a ton. One of the things that I see at birth is they'll be wide awake, and then I'll get texts from families after they go to their postpartum room or after they've been with their baby for a little bit, and they're literally the thing always sleeps. Is this normal? Should we be waking them up? No, we're not waking up a newborn. We're letting them sleep. They've been through a lot. Their brain needs that sleep for their own development. So a newborn is gonna sleep on average about 16 to 18 hours a day, which is insane per 24 hours. If you think about it, I say all the time that if we slept 16 to 18 hours a day, first of all, I would get nothing done in my life. And second of all, I would be the most rested, most calm person in the entire world, okay? Which is okay. It's good for them. We're not waking them up. But what that means is they're not sleeping from 16 to 18 hour spurts. They're waking up to feed. They have a biological need to feed every 2 to 3 2 to 4 hours. So that means that the wake times put together turn out to be they're only awake for about 6 hours a day. Otherwise, they're snuggling, they're sleeping, they're recovering, and then when they wake up, they should be ready to feed. They should kind of like play with you, meaning like engage a little bit, and then they're passed out again. That is normal, but that means that in order to feed your child to their own physiological needs with the way that their brain is developing with that need to sleep that frequently, but also to wake up, which by the way is protective against SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. So we need them waking up regularly. They're up around the clock. They also don't have a circadian rhythm. A circadian rhythm for us means that when the lights go on, I know for me, I need to get blackout curtains in my new room because I just moved recently, and I wake up to the sun now, and I sort of have like that because I'm so not a morning person, but when the sun comes up, it's very hard for me to go back to sleep unless I cover my eyes, I put on a face mask, whatever, and I will eventually go probably back to sleep, but the darkness stimulates our melatonin, which is a hormone in our body to be released that makes us sleepy. That's why when the sun goes down, we're like, I'm so mellow. Like I just kind of feel tired and now I'm ready for bed. That's good. We have our bodies set on these clocks to know when's awake time and then when's sleepy time. But newborn babies take about 4 to 6 weeks for them to start developing their circadian rhythm and begin to produce their own melatonin to help make them sleepy with the light. That means that they may be awake at 3 a.m. and and hanging out, right? And just laying there staring at you. That's okay. Let them stare at you. If you're asleep, just hang out right close to them. But know that it's normal for them to not have that rhythm. And it's really hard, in fact, impossible to force a child onto an adult schedule. They have to wake up to eat that 8 to 12 times a day, every 2 to 3 hours, every 2 to 4 hours, etc. Now, the question that I get all the time is, when will they sleep through the night? Like, help me out, give me some insight as far as like when this is gonna change rather than having to be up every 2 hours, every 3 hours. And I will say that there's such a thing as a growth spurt, total side tip here, but helpful because if you look up the app, the Wonder Weeks, I can link it down below, that there are different growth spurts that they go through where they may be awake and wanting to eat more frequently at night called cluster feeding. And so you may go through time frames where you're like, what happened? They were sleeping so well and now they're up every hour. Like, I can't do this. Just know it's so temporary. They're probably going through a growth spurt. You can look that up and see, and pretty much sure enough, you'll be like, oh, it's 4 weeks growth spurt time. So it makes sense. But as far as sleeping through the night, like we're looking at like maybe a 4 to 8 hour stretch. That's going to be different based on your own expectations, based on your own lifestyle, circumstance, your baby. Some babies sleep through the night starting around 3 months. Now, if you look at like studies and stuff, some people will go by weight. So once they're about 12 to 13 pounds, they're going to be more likely to sleep through the night. About 2/3 of babies will sleep through the night at about 6 months, but really, truly developmentally for their own brain science of getting to the place where, yes, their brain, their development is at a place where they sleep through the night is expected to be around 9 to 12 months. Okay? Now, most of you, if you have a kid, I would say the majority of people that I know, my clients, whatever, that they're probably sleeping through the night before 9 to 12 months. But if they're not, I also don't want you freaking out like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with my kid, because developmentally, that is technically the number. The other sort of side note number I have for you is about 20 to 30% of kids wake up occasionally through the night up to 2 years old. Okay, so again, each sleep system, each baby's needs, their nutrition, their own development are gonna make this very flex and flow for you. But I want you to have a baseline of understanding of what's normal so that if you're like, why is my kid still getting up every so often and they're 1.5? That's normal, okay? That we're not necessarily stressed. Now, here's the other side note is there's nothing worth your mental health, right? And sleep for an adult, when you're used to sleeping, I know certain people in my life, like have to have their 8 to 10 hours or they're not the same. They're not able to function very well. This can be particularly challenging. And that's why I wanna make sure that you subscribe down below so you come back for part 2, because I'm gonna give you some tips for coping with that change in their sleep. So you need to be thinking about like, how do I prioritize my baby's needs and understand their growth and development while really protecting your own mental health and your own bonding and your own experience of parenting, because that can be challenging at first. Again, it's not forever, but it can be challenging. Now, around that 4 to 6 weeks, that's when the circadian rhythm, or their like day-night schedules, they start learning that by rooming in with you. That's why the recommendation is to keep your baby in your room. Babies sleep better if they stay in their parents' room. The recommendation by American Academy of Pediatrics is a year, which to me is a long time. I would say that most families that I talk to don't wait a full year. 6 months is a great milestone, but even then you have to weigh your own mental health, that if it's getting in the way of your relationship, if it's keeping you awake, if you hear every single little noise and you're not sleeping even though they're sleeping, then maybe you want to consider moving them out of your room. But for that first 2 months, 3 months, even I would say up to that 12-week mark, that's when they're learning circadian rhythm, and they really get going into establishing their circadian rhythm around that 10 to 12 month period, okay? 12-week period, not months, thank God. So that's gonna change them from going into being these like nocturnal people where they're awake all hours of the night to being a little more naps during the day, sleep through the full night, okay? So you're looking at overall a huge shift in your sleep. I think the hardest part is that first 2 weeks. That's why I watch my tips for postpartum video where I talk about getting help in those first initial weeks because of that shift and change as you get used to it. Really protecting your time. That's why maternity leave is so incredibly important. If you're not in the United States, you have a long maternity leave, God bless you. United States, we have some work to do to provide for our families to make sure that they're able to bond and sleep and get used to their lives. Total other side note. But you can expect that up by 12-ish weeks, their circadian rhythm should be somewhat established. They should sleep a little bit better through the night. You may get 5 hours, 6 hours. Again, we're not waking our babies at night unless they're newborns and you're having feeding issues, or they're not gaining weight, or they're not eating enough during the day and they're actually more lethargic. But if they go 5 hours stretch every so often as a newborn, like that's probably okay. Again, check with your pediatrician. But in general, they're gonna wake themselves up by about that fourth to fifth hour. I'd say probably like more like 3 to 4, but flex and flow on that. The other thing is if you're breastfeeding, they tend to wake up a little more frequently than if you're formula feeding. So if they're on formula, expect for sure that 3 to 4, maybe a little more hour mark, versus breastfeeding, they tend to be on the breast a little bit more frequently. Now, you can track this on an app. I know my favorite app is Nara Baby, which I will try to remember to link down below. And if I forget, somebody remind me in the comments down below. But I love that app because it's so simple and straight to the point for tracking your feeds, for tracking your diapers, and then it also has a sleep section. Now, here's my tip for you, okay? Because a lot of people are trying to track their baby's sleep, and that is, I think, what the app intends. But here's where, if they're sleeping, they're sleeping. And whether they're sleeping 18 and a half hours or 16 and a half or 20 hours, it really doesn't matter for your kid. What matters is your sleep. And so this is where, when I come back in part 2, I'm going to talk about prioritizing your rest. And so instead of tracking your baby's sleep, what I want you to do while you wait for part 2 is begin to track your sleep. And now mind you, if you're not struggling with sleep, then don't track your sleep. Or you're still pregnant, don't track your sleep. But if you're really struggling and going, what's going on with my baby? Like why am I so tired? This is awful. Okay, then try and track your sleep, because cumulatively, if you get that 8 to 10 hours across the course of a 24-hour period of time instead of in one spurt, you will feel like an entirely different person, I promise you, than if you are unaware and maybe you're sleeping like a total of 4, okay? Even though it's interrupted, if your cumulative sleep turns out to be about 8 hours, it will make a difference in your life, okay? So you can track it on an app, but also don't stress, okay? Understand that your sleep will change, but it's not for forever, okay? This is not a permanent thing. It's a part of the transition to parenthood. And so as you anticipate becoming parents, maybe you're pregnant right now, people say you'll never sleep again. I want us to stop saying that if possible, because it only stresses people out, and just say your sleep is gonna change. It may be challenging at first. And we also can focus on the fact that it's for their own benefit. It's for their own growth and development that they sleep as much as they do, and also how they sleep, which is super interrupted. So take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay, I promise you. Hundreds of thousands of parents have gotten through this. It's that learning curve, it's that hump. You'll be in postpartum land. I hope that you're able to just embrace it for what it is, because someday your kids will be grown, they'll be sleeping through the night, and you'll look back and go, wow, that was challenging. But it also is very special. I think back to the time that I was with my sister for the postpartum period, and for the first at least week, I can't totally remember. I know we talk about it in my postpartum experience, so make sure you check that out. We were up throughout the night and I helped her literally with every single feed. So I slept like this with her helping her breastfeed. And we had some of the most special bonding times together. We laughed, we cried, we bonded, we enjoyed, we got to know him, my nephew Dakota. And so that time, as weird as it is and as challenging as it is and as starry-eyed as you may be or feel right now, I promise you it's not forever. Try to take a step back from your circumstance when you're feeling overwhelmed or you're like, oh my God, please go down. I want to sleep so bad. Set your baby down, swaddle them up, set some boundaries, ask for help. I'm getting ahead of myself, but that it will be okay, that this is such just a momentary period of your life. And ultimately, this is good for their brains to be waking up every so often. Thanks everyone for being with me here today. Make sure you subscribe so that you can come back for part 2, where I'm gonna teach you some of my tips to help you survive this huge change and hopefully thrive. I'm not gonna fix it, because I'm not gonna tell you that I'm gonna tell you some magic way to help your kids sleep through the night, because that's just not the best thing for them. But mostly I'm gonna give you some tips for things that you can do to really set yourself up for success prior to having your baby, or if you're already in the middle of it. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. You can check out my website where I have lots of other online classes over there. You can work one-on-one with me. If you're a nurse, make sure you follow Bundle Birth Nurses on Instagram, because we have a whole side gig happening with nurse mentorships for labor and delivery nurses all over the world. And then until next time, don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you soon. Bye. That sounded stupid. What's the word? What? I can't see. There's a pole in my head. It's magic. Okay. Well, oh, this looks a little comb-over-y. Pull it together. I don't know about you, but sleep for me is essential. That's a dumb statement. Of course it's essential. Ugh.